Hi everybody, meteorologist Joe Chaffee. Welcome to the Joe Chaffee Weather Show on this Wednesday, the 2nd of October, 2019. The day that will go down in weather history for my neck of the woods anyway, eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England. Numerous record highs were set today, and all-time record highs were set in some places, like in Newark, in New Jersey. Getting to 95, which was an all-time high for the month of October. New York City fell a couple of degrees short of tying that record at Central Park, getting to 92, but it did break the record for the date, and it is the first time since 1941, 78 years since the last time we hit 90 degrees in the month of October. The takeaway from that is that we have hit 90 degrees in the month of October before, just so that we have that in perspective. We have also Lorenzo, which is now extratropical, and when you see it on the satellite view, you will come to the conclusion that, yes, indeed, it is indeed extratropical, and we are going to see some impact here for Ireland and to Great Britain, although Ireland will probably get it a bit harder from the standpoint of wind and rain because of the fact that the circulation is probably going to weaken a bit after it moves eastward and crosses over into Wales and England. This is going to be for Wednesday night, and for Thursday they are met Iran, which is the meteorological service for Ireland, is forecasting winds gusting to over 130 kilometers an hour. So we're talking about wind gusts of hurricane force. And I think that's a reasonable type of forecast to make when it comes to Lorenzo. And Lorenzo, of course, is, I've been calling Lorenzo the pattern breaker, because that is what it is going to be doing. The now non-tropical low that it is going to be setting off a chain reaction of events occurring throughout Europe and Asia that will play down the turnpike for the whole Northern Hemisphere. So we are definitely seeing a change in the overall weather pattern underway, and I think it does lead to a pattern that is going to be wetter than what we've had, which of course it's really not saying much when you've had such an incredibly dry period of weather that we've experienced through the month of September, with many areas seeing it being among their 5 driest or 10 driest Septembers on record. So anything that brings a little bit more rain would put you above that. But I think we're going to at least go back to some sort of normalized pattern when it comes to opportunities for rain, and also in terms of the frequency, getting weather fronts to come through on a regular basis. And speaking of which, in the Northeast and in the northern Mid-Atlantic states, where we set these incredible high temperatures today, at this time tomorrow we're going to be at least 30 to 35 degrees cooler in some places, and we will see, I think, some rain out of this as we wait for a second system to move on through, and that's going to usher in some very cool air for the weekend. So let's start with Lorenzo, and we're at a place right now with respect to the satellite. I'm pulling this off of the Meteosat from the Hurricane Center, and unfortunately they only get 6-hour images with this, but Lorenzo is nothing in terms of how it looks. It is nothing compared to its former self. The actual circulation, if I can pick it out through the clouds, is probably right about here. There's very little going on southwest or southeast of the center. All of the precip now is kind of pinned back right through this whole enhanced area, and in fact we are actually seeing on the radar the beginnings of precip moving ashore over parts of Ireland, and we're going to see that increase as Lorenzo continues to make a path here toward the northeast. It's moving very rapidly. It's going to turn sharply eastward, move across Ireland, and then through Wales and through southern England. And then eventually it's going to get absorbed. There's a trough out here back in Europe, in interior Europe, that will absorb it all, and then the whole thing just moves along across Europe and Asia, and you get the pattern change that I think everybody has been either waiting for or looking for. So here's the Hurricane Center's forecast with this, and we are seeing the Hurricane Center's position from where it was at 11 a.m. at the point that they made it extratropical, moving rapidly northeast. It was moving northeast at 43 miles an hour at the time that the forecast was put out. It's moving every bit as fast as that now, or maybe even a little bit faster, and keeping it as a post-tropical system with hurricane force winds possible right through 8 a.m. Thursday. Then it weakens a little bit once it comes ashore on the west shores of Ireland, and then it moves east-southeast into Wales and eventually through southern England with tropical storm force winds more than likely. The warnings that are up, Met Iran warnings are, they do a color warning system of yellow and orange, and I would just suggest that for those of you who need more information, if you are watching from Ireland, or if you're planning a trip there in the next couple of days, it's the Met EIREANN. That's how you spell it, and go to their website. Unfortunately, I'm not able to show you their website because of copyright restrictions, but just to let you know that there is more information there. Once again, it is, when you see what a lot of these weather services in other countries have versus what the U.S. National Weather Service produces, there's no comparison. The amount of information that is available on the U.S. Weather Service is astounding, and they do an absolutely terrific job. Make no mistake. Perhaps there's always room for improvement when it comes to the forecast, but in terms of delivering the information and having a wide variety of information available, nothing beats the U.S. Weather Service. Now, with respect to the path of Lorenzo, what's left of it, the post-tropical Lorenzo, I'll pull up the GFS. Of course, these maps are courtesy of tropicaltidbits.com, and you can see here on the upper air what I was referring to with respect to the upper features. We have the extratropical low and its reflection of the upper system out here in the Atlantic, and here's that trough I was telling you about that runs through Europe, and this eventually is going to get picked up and absorbed by this trough as it moves northeast and then east and then southeast into northern France and eventually into Germany. You'll probably be able to follow the remnants along, even though at a certain point it's really going to just mesh up into that trough and you won't be able to tell the difference. But when it comes to the surface, and this is the GFS, I think I might have enough of the new GFS to show you here, and we'll put on the moisture field. So there it is, what it looks like on the surface. So you got this wrapped up low that is off to the on the left side of the center left of the picture, and then moving northward and then turning southeastward. Actually, on this run, it takes it a little bit further north, and this might be some good news if it verifies. I don't know that it will, but this latest run I just noticed takes the remnant low of Lorenzo north and west of Ireland, a little bit further offshore, where it's still pretty strong here Thursday evening, and then starts to weaken it fairly rapidly as it moves southeastward and inland, and then it's gone. So that might be, if this verifies this way, this may be a good thing. The European today still kind of holding on to that low. Can't see in between. But the pressure does come up to 971, and it does have a fairly tight gradient over Ireland and into Wales and England, the gradient starts to relax a bit, and then you see what happens when we move into Friday noontime. The low is sitting over the Netherlands, and then, of course, moves east-southeastward to Austria, and again, it gets now wrapped up into that trough that is out there to the east and moving across Europe. And remember, that sets off a chain reaction with all of this. And I'm going to show you on the upper air. I used this yesterday. I can't keep the map. I want to show the whole Northern Hemisphere. Unfortunately, I can't keep the dates up showing on this, but I just want to give you the general flavor of what's happening. And of course, Lorenzo is this wrapped up little low right there. Hang on 1 second here. So here's Lorenzo. This map, by the way, is back from last night, 8 p.m. Here's your western trough. That's what's left of the Montana snowstorm. And of course, your big ridge in the east that produced the incredible highs that we saw today. Lorenzo responding to this deep upper low south of Greenland. And when we move it along, now I'm going to leave these outlines here. There's another trough that's out here in the west. So when we move it, you'll see the changes that are happening. But the things to focus, the most important thing to focus on is that ridge in the east. Because when we go through time, Lorenzo now getting kicked up into Europe. If you watch what happens across the top of the screen, across Europe and Asia, those weather systems start to get kicked along. And as a result, you begin to see important changes happening. And we just looked at the European model here. Important changes happening across the U.S. So the ridge in the east, we go from this over the next 10 days to a troughing in the eastern part of the United States, and the ridge is gone. There's a flat flow across the U.S. from west to east at the end of the period, and you've got troughs that are coming in off the west coast. Kind of funny here, just kind of looking at this, that in 10 days, where the trough axis lies roughly about the same as where they are now, but the big change is the fact that that ridge in the east is gone. Now, we'll bring up the GFS so you can take a look at it from the GFS perspective. And same thing here with respect to that ridge in the east. It goes away. And it has to. You just can't. This was an anomaly, and you're just not going to have it last for very long at all. This is our one very hot day, really. And there's Lorenzo out to the in the Atlantic. Gets the same idea, gets kicked into Ireland and England and beyond, and then it wraps up into that trough in Europe, which then starts to swing along. And you'll start to see, and this is only out through early next week, where we have another trough approaching. Here's an important takeaway. The Lorenzo not only is getting that ridge out of here, but it's going to be allowing weather systems to be moving across Canada and the northern tier of the United States. This opens up the door for some opportunities for rainfall. It also opens up the door for opportunities for cooler air masses to arrive on a regular basis. And I think that's a big difference here. Again, now I just backed up to the earlier run so you can see it. The upper high goes away, so we start with that upper high. It goes away, and going out into early next week, you see these troughs swinging into the east. You see something off the east coast with the standpoint of some sort of upper low cutting off. I don't know how real that is. The European has the same idea, but we do have later in the period, you have a strong trough that the model swings in across central Canada down through the Great Lakes and drives that trough down through the southeast and into Florida. So this is a much different type of upper air pattern. Where you have a deep upper low in the Atlantic at the moment is replaced by a very strong ridge that builds up along about 40-45 degrees west and builds all the way up to Greenland. So that's an important change as well. With respect to the overall pattern, and you keep seeing these weather systems dropping into the eastern part of the United States in the longer term. So this is where I think we're going. The models are handling Lorenzo correctly. And it's going to mean for some different weather going forward across much of the U.S. Now, I'm going to set this up, and we'll come back to the GFS in a moment. I want to take a look at what's happening right now with respect to current conditions, because we've got this. We had a day today that was really just kind of astounding in terms of the temperatures. I had the 5 o'clock plots here. It doesn't seem to, let's see if it'll preload. There we go. Here's some of the numbers that we're seeing at the moment. And make the boundaries just a little bit clearer for you. I don't know why the map resets after a while, after a few minutes, but it does what it has to do, I suppose. So now you'll see the state lines a bit clearer. We're kind of playing find the cold front. All right, let me patiently let it load. And I think I want to also add, let's add the radars as well, the radar echoes. So our cold front is coming through, and we can see that from the temperature differences that are showing up. We're still seeing temperatures that are in the upper 80s and low 90s across central and southern New Jersey, down into Delaware and in Maryland and Virginia. But when we look up to the north, we can see that the front has pretty much passed through Poughkeepsie now, which has dropped about 20 degrees down to 66. We're looking at the temperatures still in the low 80s at White Plains. And we have temperatures that have cooled off in northern New Jersey, but that's because of the showers that are moving through. So I think it's a pretty good bet if we look at where the, where the winds have shifted. We are seeing, looks to me like the front is, I could probably almost draw it as a straight line. It kind of looks like the front is something like this now. Let's change the color. So there's your cold front here, just about moving just about into the lower Hudson Valley. Oddly enough, the model does this a lot with the GFS, where it pushes the front too far south too fast, because it had it through Long Island and New York City at around 1 o'clock this afternoon, and in reality, it's still really not through yet. There was a lead line of some showers that developed around 2 o'clock that knocked everybody off their highs of the day, whoever got into those showers and storms. And now we're getting the main thrust, the main push with this cooler air coming down from the north. And indeed, that is cooler air. If you look up north, we'll plot some of these temperatures as of 6 o'clock, and you're already down in the low 50s in the Hudson Valley. Up in Maine, it's actually quite cool. In some areas up in northern Maine, seeing temperatures up in the middle 40s, and that cool air extends eastward also into New Brunswick, and we've got temperatures in the upper 40s to around 50 over Nova Scotia, and in the 40s up in Newfoundland. Because remember, as you go further east now, you've got that big Atlantic storm and that upper low sitting off the south coast of Greenland, and that's the driver here as far as the upper airflow is in the east. But that cool air is coming in. Again, at this time tomorrow night, we're going to be looking at a lot of these places. We're going to see temperatures at least 30 or even 35 degrees cooler. And we've got a second weather system that we're going to have to wait for to move through. Here's the plot from 2 o'clock this afternoon. And this is where WPC on their map plot, where they drew that frontal boundary. So 90s on the south side, 50s and 40s on the north side. That's a front. Okay, that is a front, and there's your high coming down out of Canada. That's a pretty nice size high in terms of strength, 1030 millibars. Temperatures in the 30s when you move up further north of Lake Superior. So this is indeed some cooler air. First shot comes in as this front goes by, and then we've got that second low that is coming out of Kansas and Missouri. That's going to be running northeastward on the weak side until it gets off the coast. But it's that mechanism that really drives the cooler air and brings it down into the northeast and down through the northern mid-Atlantic states, and eventually brings dew point relief all the way down into the southeastern part of the United States. So taking a look here, why don't we go wider so folks out west that are watching can take a look at what's happening. And we're actually seeing a little bit of snow in the mix again in parts of Wyoming and Montana tonight, and even into western parts of North Dakota, with getting some of that cold air from the high draining back westward in through the northern plains and into Montana. Now, of course, that all disappears. And here in the northeast for tomorrow morning, your frontal boundary looks like it pushes down to about maybe Maryland, Northern Virginia, right in here. Now, what may wind up happening is in a weak way, because you're going to have this onshore flow tomorrow, and that means temperatures that are going to go nowhere. But you might wind up seeing the winds bend around more briefly to the southeast or south. That could actually knock temperatures up a little bit tomorrow night in some places until this low and second frontal boundary moves on through. We are going to see some on and off rain, I think, from late tonight through into tomorrow night until this moves out. And then here it finally gets here on for Friday in terms of drier weather and some sunshine. The frontal boundary here is all the way down into South Carolina and northern Georgia by Friday morning, and I think you're going to see that dew point relief push down a bit further. Now, one of the things I want to point out here is that we've got another front setting up and another weather system coming eastward going into the weekend. The core of this cool air will be overhead during the day on Saturday and moving out. So we are going to see winds go to the south on Sunday, bringing some moisture back, but it's not like we're building a big ridge here in the east. We're awaiting the arrival of the next frontal system. So that sets us up into that puts us in a pretty good place as far as rain is concerned. Also, I want to bring attention to a low an inverted trough and a low that's forecast near the Bahamas. There's some kind of weak tropical system here, and it more than likely won't be able to do very much. It'll get pulled northward and northeastward. I suppose you could make an argument that there's an outside chance that this low could form into a weak tropical depression. The GFS has a hint of it here. But on Monday, we've got a fairly solid area of rain with this front that moves on through. And it looks like some of that rain extends down into the southeast, but it's not quite as generous as what some of the prior runs have done. And we also have a bit of a low that the model tries to develop there in the western Gulf, in the southwestern Gulf of Mexico early next week. I'm not sure how much value to put into that. But the bottom line is, as far as the weather goes across the country, some rain through the plains and into the Great Lakes over the weekend with the next front. The northeast and northern mid-Atlantic dry. Then we see a chance for rain here coming in Sunday night into Monday until that front clears out Monday evening or Monday night. And then here comes the next dry, cool air mass that moves into the northeast for Tuesday and Wednesday. And then we set up for the next frontal boundary that approaches late next week and next weekend with a nice cool high behind that one. So look, at least we're getting some systems moving on a regular basis. There's no big ridge building into the east. More opportunities for at least some rain and not the bone dry conditions that we have been seeing. With respect to, we're talking about some humidity relief. Here's how the GFS handles this. So of course today was hot and humid, no doubt. Although you have to tell you, from my perspective, I think it does feel different. The temperature map looked like a July day, but in terms of the angle of the sun and everything else, it just didn't quite feel like a really hot, humid July type of day. It was definitely a hot, humid October type of day, but it does have a bit of a different feel to it, in my opinion. So dew point relief comes in tonight and tomorrow. Doesn't get really that far south. You still have dew points in the 60s from Virginia southward. And then finally on Friday, you get that real push of dry air that works its way down into the Carolinas by Saturday and kind of gets in there into northern Georgia and through South Carolina by late Saturday afternoon into Saturday night. Of course, now here comes the next front. And this one brings more dew point relief further south into the Gulf states, and into the southeastern part of the United States with dew points in the 40s and 50s as we head into next week, and that's a good thing. And of course, we on here will probably see the humidity come up a little bit late Sunday night with the south to southwest flow that develops and that cold front. Now, in terms of rainfall on the GFS over the next 10 days, a bit more. I'll just go, well, let's go out 5 days first off. So here's 5 days on the GFS. So you're seeing a nice stripe of rainfall here being indicated, some 2-inch plus amounts between now and Monday. Big positive there. And as far as tomorrow is concerned, into tomorrow night, some areas are going to see between half an inch and an inch in that narrow stripe that you're looking at. Still bone dry, though, in the areas from the southern mid-Atlantic down into the southeastern part of the United States. We'll finally start to saturate it a little bit as we move into early next week, and then a bit more beyond that. But again, holding on to a few pockets there in North Carolina and Virginia that are having a bit of a tough time generating any rainfall over the next 7 to 10 days. And of course, because we're getting to that time of year, let's look at the snowfall forecast map from the GFS. Why? Because we can. So here it is across North America. Again, what we're seeing here is something that you would normally see this time of year during the first part of the month of October. It's the latter part of the month and into November that I think we need to pay more closer attention to. And for those of you that are really hyped up about the Siberian snow cover, at least through the first 15 days of the month. Now, you got to wait for when Dr. Judah Cohen puts out his charts to see the rate of growth and how that compares to past years. I mean, it doesn't really look all that impressive here overall through the first 15 days of the month. Most of the snowfall growth is north of 60 degrees north. It's what you want to see it south of 60 degrees north down to at least 50 degrees north. And it doesn't look like you're getting a whole lot of snow cover growth here during that period. And the reason why we bring this up is because of the fact that if you're new to the channel, Siberian snow cover growth is something that some longer range forecasters look at as far as trying to figure out what kind of winter we're going to have into the east in that sort of forever, what seemingly endless search for that magic bullet with regards to what indicator can we look at that will give us the answer we're looking for. This is a time of year where we see the folks putting up their wintertime forecasts on social media, and we all know the drill. Every year it's below average temperatures and above normal snowfall for the I-95 corridor. There's no other forecast that is acceptable except for that, just so you know. And please also understand that I'm being somewhat sarcastic here. Weather warnings that are up tonight, just kind of interesting that with all the 90-degree temperatures that we're looking at today, and we've got frost advisories up in upstate New York, Vermont, parts of New Hampshire, and in southern areas of Maine, because the northern areas have already seen their first frost. Also in western Nebraska, northeastern Colorado, where it's gotten a bit cooler in the last few days, and we have also some freeze watches and freeze warnings up there as well, so that's a bit of a change. And with respect to the 7-day rainfall amount from WPC, from the Weather Prediction Center, not really all that overwhelming here. Dry in the southwest, a bit better, but still lacking through the Gulf states in the southeast, but it is something. Rainfall amounts generally under a half an inch. The northern mid-Atlantic and northeast seem to do better here across Pennsylvania and through much of New England and much of southeastern New York through the middle and upper Hudson Valley, looking at rainfall amounts over the next 7 days of a couple of inches, 2 to 3 inches in some areas. A bit calmer over the western lakes where it's been relatively active, but still some 2-inch plus amounts there, and a narrow stripe of heavier rains cutting back from parts of Missouri, southeast Kansas through Oklahoma, and on up into northwest Texas and into New Mexico. A lot of moisture being drawn in the Gulf of Mexico. I think if there's one place with respect to tropical storm development, we're probably going to have to watch the areas in the Northwest Caribbean and in the Gulf of Mexico down the road. Climatologically speaking, that's the area where you would normally see something. But it seems like the models are going that way. And with the weakening of that ridge, it does allow for lower than normal pressures to continue down in that area. Right now we have disorganized, disturbed weather in the Caribbean and out over on the Atlantic side north of Cuba and the Dominican Republic and Haiti. Nothing much coming out of that. The Hurricane Center acknowledges that it exists, but giving it a whopping 10% chance of development at this point. And you can see the clouds streaming across the north. The satellite tonight really just outlines very well where your big upper high is, sitting in over Alabama, Mississippi, right in there. There's your big ridge and the edge of the ridge that runs up in through Illinois, Ohio, Indiana, Ohio, across Pennsylvania to about New York City, and how that ridge is going to get flattened out and pushed southward as you have this energy that's running along to the north of that through the Great Lakes and into New England. So just a little bit of patience, folks, but it's coming. So if you really hated the heat that we experienced today, and I don't blame you, because after a while you just at least with me, I just kind of want it to go away. So I'm happy when it does go away. And then when it makes a reappearance like this, you want it to go away even faster. So that's kind of what I'm hoping for with regards to this, that it just finally just goes away. And it is definitely going away. We'll be all out with sweaters and jackets tomorrow. You watch. Bob the Builder is in Ireland and wondering if the storm is going to go to red. Bob, I don't know. Of course, check your local weather service there, Met Iran, for all the latest information. We talked earlier in the beginning that the latest GFS seems to want to take a little bit longer to kick it inland and give it more time to weaken before it does, in which case it would be very good news from the standpoint of seeing less impact. But I would just caution you that this is just one run of the model at the moment that is showing this, and it may just be a hiccup. And we want to make sure that we're dealing with something that's real and not something that's just a one-run hiccup. Mark Gladfelter, am I happy about getting back to snow amounts? Yeah, kind of. It gets my blood boiling. You can see I get a little smile on my face over it. But yeah, I do look forward to this time of year because it is sort of the build-up. I've admitted many times I'm a snow weenie like anybody else, like most of the folks that are on here. It's just that when it comes to the actual forecast part of it, I turn that all off, and we go with a very focused, tight reality look at what's happening. We never wishcast here. And I don't think anybody could ever accuse me of being a wishcaster. Okay, Johnny Quest. NOAA makes its teleconnections off the 0Z run, and if you go to the ESRL website, okay, and I'll do one of these days when we got a little bit. And I actually have done this before on my website. I'll try and find the link for you. It's buried in there somewhere. But there is a way that it's calculated, and it involves different areas of geography. It's not just a simple matter of the east, the trough in the east, with some of these things. But if you look at the website here, I'm going to put the link up on the chat board for you. For example, if you look at when they calculate the North Atlantic Oscillation, okay, they're looking at pressure changes between 35 north and 45 north and between 70 west and 10 west, okay? But from that, they subtract pressure changes that occur between 55 and 70 degrees north and 70 west to 10 west. What that is that area between 55 and 70, okay, and the pressures. So it's the pressure change. What you're looking for In that zone between 35 north and 45 north is lower pressure, and between the zone between 55 north and 70 north, you're looking at higher pressure. And if the difference goes negative, and you have a negative NAO and you have blocking. So in other words, you got that high latitude blocking between 55 and 70. The Pacific North America Index is a complicated index because it covers a whole bunch of different areas of geography. From 15, and it's listed here, I won't go through all of them, but it's not just having a ridge in the west, but it also involves having a trough out at 160, and it also involves having a trough in the southeastern part of the United States. So all of those pressure changes are added and subtracted in the formulas that they have. It's a simple, fairly simple mathematical formula to just kind of subtract and add the pressures up and come out with some kind of number. That's how the indices are calculated. And they are coincidental indices in that they're reflecting what the model is showing of that particular run. So you're looking at a snapshot of a model at 0Z, you come up with a certain figures with regards to the state of those different indices and the pressure changes, the oscillations. But if we look at the GFS, say 12 hours later, if the model changes, if suddenly there's a ridge where there's a trough or a trough where there's a ridge, then it sort of renders those values kind of meaningless. So you got to be really careful in how you use them, because you can only use them with reference, you only can really use them with reference to that specific model run, unless the next run is fairly similar. I would suspect, knowing the way the GFS behaves, what it loves to do, which is change in the longer range, and sometimes by a big way, that you're going to be hard-pressed to find back-to-back runs that are reasonably close all the way out through 16 days. So you would definitely see changes. So you have to use these indices with a lot of caution, because they're only as good as the model run that they were calculated off of. Mr. LaPointe, Steve LaPointe, nice to see you on board. For all my years in weather, I always take one storm at a time, or at least I try to, and never give an early prediction unless we're inside 48 and then within 24 the final. Well, 72 hours I kind of give my first call, and it's usually a very broad call. And then after that, when we get inside like 36 to 24 hours, we can go ahead and make a final call, and then we cross our fingers and pray most of the time. Izzy D, can I show you how you can find the website with the records that were broken or not, and really high temperatures in Toms River? Okay, so what you can do is you can start at weather.gov, and each weather site, whoops, I just lost you guys. Hang on one second. I mean, I know you're still there. I just lost you on my screen. So hang on a second. So what you can do is, if you go to weather.gov, and I'll start you with New York. As far as records for some of the smaller stations, you're not going to find it, but one of the options you have there is for past weather. Okay, so I'm going to put the link up there for you, Izzy. Just give me 1 second. So here it is, and now I'll bring the screen up really fast, and this is for anybody who wants to, if you ever want to do a little bit of some climate research, this is a good way to do that. So here's I'll bring it up on the window. All right. So right here on this particular page, every Weather Service office has this. It's under past weather. So if you, for example, if you want to see records, you have all these are the reporting stations that you have available to you in the New York City weather office. Mount Holly has a whole bunch of different ones. Central Park, LaGuardia, Kennedy, Islip, Bridgeport. If you click on Newark and click on the option of record event report, okay, it will bring up the last record report that was sent. And this one from Newark was at 1:20 in the afternoon. I don't know why you can't see it on the window, but trust me, it'll bring up another window, and You know what? I'll open it another way. Hang on one second. Let's see if I can open this up another way. Nope, can't do it. Okay, so trust me on this. If you click on record event report, and then click on your whatever particular city you have as an option. Today, for example, at Newark at 133, record high 94 set at Newark, New Jersey, breaking the old record of 86 back in 2013. This also breaks the record for the all-time highest temperature for the month of October of 93, set back in 1941. So, Izzy, I tell you what, if you've got any more questions regarding that, please, by all means, just message me on Patreon, and if you need me to resend you the links, I will be happy to do it. Steve LaPointe, thank you so much for hitting Super Chat tonight. It's a beer and cigar for me. Thank you very much. I do appreciate it greatly. And, I'm kind of stunned. Thank you very much for doing that. All right, let's get this off the board. Hang on. Didn't get a chance to minimize that window. So you got to see at least how Super Chat works. Okay. But again, thanks very much for doing that. And Izzy, also, thank you for hitting Super Chat tonight. Really appreciate it. Again, you need more info, just message me on Patreon, and I'll reshare the links to you and help you out as best I can. Johnny Quest and a new fishing lure. You've also both very generous, all of you tonight. Thank you so much for hitting Super Chat. Okay, I got to go because it's coming up on 22 the hour, and I have to do a live TV hit because I'm actually back to work today for 3 days, which is really nice. It feels good to have, I had 5 days off, 3 days on, 2 days off. Next week it's 3 days on and then 6 days off. So I'll be able to devote a lot of my time, a lot more of my, I'm going to be progressively devoting more of my time to my online stuff. So I'm happy to have all of you to be part of that. Let me also just bring up 2 things. Make sure, and I've been saying this repeatedly, but I just need to keep repeating it. Download my weather app, my free weather app for Android or for the iPhone. They both have the latest updates in there. They default to your location for the local forecasts and for current conditions. There's a new Long Island tab for Long Islanders. When I get the opportunity, I do update that separately on the app. But it's important to have because, as you know, I talked about this last week. I had some, another round of issues with Facebook with regards to restrictions. Those restrictions came off, and then yesterday on 5 weather posts that I did on my website, they restricted them. They didn't disallow them, but they restricted them in terms of accessing some of the Facebook tools that I use because I violated community standards. So apparently now community standards means I was beside myself. I mean, I wrote about Lorenzo. I wrote about the record highs that were coming, the colder air that was coming at the end of this week. I banged my head on the table trying to figure out what AI bot read that and somehow came up with the fact that I was, inciting violence or all sorts of other stuff. I don't even want to make it specific because then they're just going to hear me saying those words and I'll probably trigger off another bot. Okay, it's just an example. Okay, YouTube, don't give me any problems here. But the bottom line is this. I can't really deal with anymore this constant activity that's going on Facebook with respect to these restrictions. They're ridiculous, and I want to make sure, I want everybody, if you're on the app, you won't miss anything. So, and it's free. So please go ahead and download it. Also, my partner Ben Scott, who does Angry Ben, many of you may know him. Angry Ben's Angry Weather. His app is out. I made an app for him. It's called the Angry Weatherman, and if you have an Android device, it's available for Android. And we're having the same problems getting it to Apple, but we're working on it, and hopefully we'll have the iPhone version very soon. Paul Roman, thank you so much for hitting Super Chat tonight. Really, really appreciate it. Paul, one of our regulars. And, of course, just a quick mention, those of you who are interested, weather geeks among you, There's always my weather platform on Patreon. A number of you are members, but if you are interested, it's just $2 a month to start, unless you really need my help in a very, very big way on a day-to-day basis, and there's some other tiers available for you. The link is up there, and it's also up on the descriptor to this live stream, and if you're watching this on a replay, the descriptor to this video. So thanks very much for being here tonight. Really appreciate it. Weather in 5 tomorrow morning. We'll update everything, and then we'll have our regular YouTube live stream tomorrow night. Have a great night. We'll see you.